if you accept that there's no reason for the beeswax, that solves the vast majority of your problems. It's only going to be an issue if you lightly sprinkle it over the old man's head. There's 3 problems with that though. 1, he's old. 2, he's a man. And 3, he's sprinkling it onto his head. Most people aren't going to be cool with that. It's not something a lot of people are going to take lying down. If you go for something a little more agreeable, maybe a kneecap for example, who's going to complain if you sprinkle something over their kneecap? I wouldn't, would you? Probably not. Who cares? It's a kneecap. It doesn't have the same kind of sensory overload you would get if something was sprinkled onto your head. You've got the eyes, you've got the nose, you've got the mouth, you've got the sight, smell, taste. You've got all that stuff in one spot. Not to mention hearing, if it's some kind of noisy sprinkling you're doing. If you're not really subtle about it, you're just like dropping it from a great height. Not so much light dusting as like a shower almost, and that would set off even more senses, wouldn't it? You'd be able to feel that a lot more as well, wouldn't you? If you just put it over a kneecap, for example, maybe if you've got a really hairy kneecap and you can sense all the movement in the air, like tarantula hair, doesn't seem very likely. I would say the best bet is probably kneecap. Although, thinking about it a little more carefully, kneecap is within view of most people. If you're looking down, unless you're really fat, you can see your kneecaps, can't you? So I could see how that could potentially offend somebody. If you're just going to be sprinkling all over someone's kneecap. It's not the worst place, but it's not the best. Best place would be somewhere not very sensitive and somewhere where you can't really see. Maybe back of the calf or something like that. You can still see it, but you have to crane your head a bit. It's not as natural a movement. It's just looking down at your kneecaps. That's just my opinion on it anyway. I know some other people probably have vastly different views on it than I do. I don't claim to be the authority on this by any means. It's not like it's cheese pilfering or something where I would consider myself, not to toot my own horn as the saying goes, but I would say I am one of the leading experts in that field. But I wouldn't steer this off course by going into that. I feel that would be a cheap way to make myself seem more credible in the light of the potential criticism that I've predicted that I could receive from those with differing viewpoints. Although what I will say, I will draw a slight comparison to the whole world of cheese pilfering where I consider myself the foremost authority. I would say the one similarity is considering the role that the senses play in that. When you're snatching up that piece of delicious dairy product, you better be fully aware of all the people around you, what they can see, what they can smell, what they can hear. Probably not so much what they can taste, unless you're actually purloining the cheese from inside their mouth, which it's not one of the regulation situations. That's not where we would advise you to do it. If you look in the handbook, there's a certain list of scenarios. That's not one of them. It never will be. People have asked for it to be put in. I'm not a fan of it personally. It's not even so much the being rude aspect. You know, you're just going up to someone, taking food out of their mouth quite literally. It's not even the rudeness. It's the fact, do you really want to eat something that's just been covered, caked, in some instances, in somebody else's saliva? Especially if they bit down into it and there's teeth marks, it's like a little valley in the cheese, and that's just going to be full, overflowing with saliva. If you put that in your mouth, it doesn't even bear thinking about, really. So naturally I just thought about it for a moment there, and it's disgusting, really, isn't it? But to get back on the matter at hand, I would say, when you're studying the role that the senses play in this, it's very important, because if you're going to be doing that sprinkling that we discussed earlier, just like if you're taking a piece of cheese from somebody, you will want to know what their cone of vision is. With sight, it's more of a cone. With hearing, not so much, it's more of an abstract kind of shape. With smell, kind of the same, but that would be interesting, wouldn't it? If you could see what people's senses are doing, you would see the cone of vision emitting from their eyes. You would see, well, I imagine the hearing would be kind of like wider cones out of the ears. The smell, I'm not familiar enough with the inner workings of nostrils, not human nostrils anyway. If you're asking me about camel nostrils, I can tell you pretty much everything there is to know about camel nostrils, but that's not something I'm willing to get into right now. I feel I've sidetracked this quite enough. But I will say one thing about camel nostrils. If you have the skills, you can easily take advantage of a camel financially. Their nostrils may be powerful, but they do not know how to sniff out a good deal or a bargain. You can really do a number on them. You can rip them off. I'm not going to put it any more politely than that. That's just how it deserves to be called. Right down the middle. I'm unbiased on this. I do have shares in several camels, so you could argue that that makes me slightly biased, but I'm not looking at it from that point of view. I'm not expecting a payout. I'm not expecting any dividends on those shares anytime soon. The world camel trade is not booming at the moment, it's fair to say.